Hi, I'm Alison.
And I'm Taylor.
And we're the hosts of the Anxiety Chicks podcast, where we dive deep into the reality of anxiety, nutrition, and mental health.
Listen as we explore all things anxiety healing while keeping it real, including our own struggles with mental health.
We'll bring our expertise as healing professionals to the conversation while discussing the tools and strategies you need to heal the anxious mind.
Listen to the Anxiety Chicks on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Chicks podcast. I'm Alison Sepanera.
And I'm Taylor.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Chicks podcast. I'm Alison Sepanera.
And I'm Taylor.
And we are so excited to be back today with another episode. One that you guys have probably heard me talk about the interest in talking about something like this for years because of everything that I've went through when I was younger with my depression and anxiety and how I coped and kind of my journey. And so welcome, Colleen Freeland, to the Anxiety Chicks.
Hi, Alison and Taylor. It's good to be here.
So excited to have you on. We're going to talk all things how to cope with anxiety and depression and our nervous system in a healthy way. But we're going to dive a little bit into the way that are some unhealthy ways to cope. And one of them includes a way that I used to cope for a long time, which was alcohol use. And definitely I will get into some of the things that I went through and why, that was a route for me. And hopefully Colleen can give us some insight on what we can do if we're stuck in this kind of spiral of unhealthy coping patterns. Before we get started, I want to introduce Colleen and talk a little bit about her. Colleen Freeland is an intuitive drinking coach and host of the globally top-ranked It's Not About the Alcohol podcast. Colleen founded emotional sobriety coaching for high-achieving professional women who want to reduce alcohol consumption by 80%. She combines holistic and evidence-based strategies in neuropsychology or neurophysiology, cognitive reframing, and spirituality to reprogram the mind and body. So you can actually prefer drinking in moderation. Colleen secretly struggled with alcohol use disorder for over 20 years before discovering that the solution to overdrinking is to get happy, not sober. She is an addiction and recovery certified master life coach with an MSc in health coaching and a BS in biology and chemistry education, and is certified as a women's functional and integrative health professional. Oh my gosh, what can't you do, Colleen? That is awesome. I mean, whoa.
Well, thank you. I often say you forgot the PhD in drinking, but I guess we'll get to that.
Same, right? Okay, yes. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story because, it sounds like you also struggled with having unhealthy, coping patterns with drinking and alcohol use disorder. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story and how you kind of got to where you are today.
Well, I was always a drinker. I never felt like it was unhealthy. I just thought, I needed a lot of it. And I kind of had a great life. I had 4 kids. I ran marathons. I taught hot power yoga and boot camp. And I volunteered and I coached clients. And I just did all the things. I was very, very busy. And for a long time, my habit was about a bottle of wine a night. I had a 15-year streak on that. And it didn't seem to be a problem. I wasn't proud of that. The older I got, the more I realized I was the only one polishing off an entire bottle on a Monday. But I also just thought I was living the good life and I was grateful and there didn't seem to be a lot of problems. Of course, in hindsight, I realized that alcohol was a coping mechanism. I thought, and the story I was telling myself was that I was just celebrating my life and I was just blessed and lucky, to be able to do all of that. But what I was really doing was operating on a deficit. I was pushing myself constantly, never stopping. My feet hit the ground at 5:30 in the morning and I ran like a bat out of hell all day long. And then, of course, you go into the evening with 4 kids and it's not break time. It's laundry time, cooking time, homework time, dance, soccer, all of the things. And so I just went like that for years. And of course, that is an autopilot, and that's where habits take over. And so I had this drinking habit. And it wasn't until COVID where the wheels really fell off the bus. All of a sudden, we're in lockdowns and I have no guardrails. I had no reason to be up at 5:30 in the morning. I had no reason to not drink. It got earlier and earlier every day because I wasn't driving kids around all night. And the stress of the homeschooling and, all of that stuff. And my drinking I was already a healthy drinker, but I just started, all of a sudden I'm drinking almost a bottle of vodka every single night. And one day I woke up and I was like, the only thing worse than the idea of quitting drinking was the idea of not quitting drinking. And that was the only thing I could do to kind of self-rescue, if you will. And I did what most women, middle-aged especially, do, and that is I
Oh, I think we
thought that I
lost
had
her.
to quit drinking
Do you
forever.
see her?
In our culture, there's a
Taylor?
different
Sorry. We just lost you for 1 minute.
that
And
should be fine on Riverside, like when it times out because it's a local recording.
okay. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll go back. So I did what, the right thing to do because in our culture, we are taught that there's a difference between normal drinking and alcoholics, and I for sure qualified. So I got my butt into the AA program and started going to meetings. And then because I had this all or nothing mindset, I just jumped right into the sober alcoholic identity, going to meetings. I was leading meetings very quickly. And it was just another identity. I went from team drinker to team non-drinker, not really realizing that alcohol was never the problem. Because what happened for me 2.5 years later is I wake up and I'm like, my doctor wants to put me in the hospital. I still have anxiety. I was clinically depressed for the first time in my life. And I was doing everything right. I was perfect. I was blemish free. There was no fingers that could be pointed at me. And I was collapsing under the weight of the pressure I was putting on myself and that anxiety that was driving my mental thought processes. And so that's where I realized it's not about the alcohol. It was about my mindset. It was about my relationship with myself.
I mean, it's so wonderful that you were able to get to that place where you really got to the root of what was going on, right? Because that, of course, that's an unhealthy way to cope, right? Alcohol is a depressant, and a lot of people don't understand what that means because people say to me all the time, all my clients say, okay, but wait, why do I feel more relaxed when I'm drinking then? And
Well,
go
let
ahead.
me explain that because most people don't know that alcohol is a biphasic drug. And I want to be clear, I'm not demonizing alcohol at all, but it is a drug. But we're not really taught that. We don't even language it. We say alcohol and drugs, right? And it's very socially acceptable and it does make you feel good. But biphasic drug means that small amounts and large amounts have opposite effects. The biphasic line is 0.055. And so the first phase is therapeutic. Yeah, you do feel more relaxed, a little euphoric, connected, grounded, all of the things. But once you cross the biphasic line into intoxication, so buzzed versus intoxication, the negative side effects just start to compound because it is a depressant taking down your central nervous system, and your brain's job is to keep you alive. So it releases adrenaline and cortisol and norepinephrine. And that's why you wake up in the middle of the night after you've been drinking because the buzz wears off, but your cortisol levels are jacked. And it also messes with your dopamine. If you drink too much, it spikes your dopamine, and what goes up must come down. So the next day you're in a deficit. And so you've got high levels of cortisol, low levels of dopamine, plus your to-do list that's a mile long. And that's why it becomes so hard and habit forming. It becomes hard to not drink if that's what your habit is because your brain chemistry is off. And of course, the mind body connection, your cortisol levels are jacked, which means you're perceiving life so stressful. You're not making the connection between the alcohol. I always thought when I woke up the next morning, my blood alcohol was 0. Turns out that's not true. But I just thought it was a fresh start. It's a new day. Here I go. I'm going to do better today. And I didn't realize, how it's like my body was just in this constant state of tension, but I was so disconnected from my body. I love to say now, like, you don't have a high tolerance for alcohol. You have a high tolerance for ignoring yourself and just continue to push, push, and go, go.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that explanation because I don't think anyone could have said that better. I mean, and also in a way that's digestible, right? Because what people don't understand is there is like a withdrawal with alcohol, right? People think you're right. People don't think of alcohol as a drug. Like a lot of people just don't. It's just two different things, but it really is. I think that's a big reason too. And you can tell me if you see this, why people feel like they have to continuously do it. And again, I just want to put a disclaimer out there. There are different levels of addiction and alcohol use disorder. And so we're not here to like diagnose today. We're kind of having a conversation, an educational conversations. We just want to put that disclaimer out there that of course, please go seek medical help from a professional if you feel symptomatic of addiction or characteristics of any of that, right? We're having a conversation that's educational. So, but that being said, I do think that there is, and what I've seen about people that kind of continuously need that, whether they fit the criteria of an addict or not, there is this, when they find this way to cope, it's almost that withdrawal makes someone want to go and drink again because that's what helps them feel balanced again, right?
Yeah, for sure. And especially with people with anxiety, like the self judgment needs to stop and have compassion. What I teach, which we can get into, is that the solution to alcohol use disorder is a feeling. If you felt in control of your life and yourself, if you felt powerful, if you felt calm and relaxed, you would drink like somebody who feels those things. And what people don't understand, especially with anxiety, is we are self medicating. And that's why, like in my program, like you said, there's different strokes for different folks and different places to fall in the spectrum of addiction. But we don't even remove alcohol completely because for now, that is your one source of relief. Like what we have to do is fix the reasons why you need so much relief before we knock the table legs out from under you. Alcohol was the one place that alcohol gave me permission to slow down. It shut off my brain because I didn't know how to do that for myself. So it is a coping skill. It is a form of self-medication, and it works until it doesn't work because of the habit forming and the effect on your physiology.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about what some signs are that someone's relationship with alcohol may need to be sort of reevaluated. What have you noticed?
There's really just one, and it's very simple. Do you drink more than you think you should drink? Like that is kind of like the definition of alcohol use disorder is not how much or how often you drink. And that's also one of the faulty beliefs that we have to work through. There's no right way to drink. There's no healthy way to drink. There's just the way you drink and the experiences that you're having. And so what happens with alcohol use disorder, some people drink, they have no guilt. Like when I was in college and I was drinking till I puked, like I didn't have anything in my head that there was something wrong with that. I mean, I'm in college, It wasn't until my mid 30s where I judged myself in comparison to my peers who were also pretty heavy drinkers, but I was taking the trophy. So it is the idea in your head that you drink more than you should drink and that you can't stop, or you try to change and then that doesn't go well. You're not following through. And then it becomes a snowball rolling down the hill because of the way the brain works. The brain will show you evidence of whatever you think you believe. And if you think you can't, then you're going to be noticing evidence that you're not in control or you're losing control. And then that there's a part of the brain called the habinula, and that's your internal scorekeeper. And every time you try and fail, the evidence is just stacked against you. And that is the kill switch on your motivation to learn from your mistakes, to look upstream and see what's causing those mistakes. And you start to diagnose yourself as the problem instead of your strategies as the problem.
I feel like you're very self-aware, which is amazing. But I feel like there's a lot of people who aren't self-aware and they aren't able to see like that their drinking is a problem. And they say like, oh, well, everyone does it and stuff like that. Did you have anybody in your life that was like wanting to suggesting things and you would like almost argue with them? I'm coming from this from a personal standpoint with a friend we had. And everybody kind of got together and they were like, because it was getting pretty bad. And he just didn't believe it was a problem. And it really was a really bad problem. He's luckily very sober now and doing amazing, a year sober actually a couple of days ago. But for the longest time, he himself didn't see it as a problem.
Yeah, that's a complicated one. And I get questions like that a lot, people who want to help other people. And the truth is, of course, my partner, didn't like how much I drank, why are you doing that? And of course I would get defensive, but I wasn't having fun. And as far as your friend, I think some people don't get help until they want help. And the more you try to, like that question, how do I tell someone they have a problem? You don't. You
Yeah.
set your own boundaries because people are hardwired to resist. Like it's a psychological thing. So the more you tell someone they have a problem, the more you are actually reinforcing the psychological barriers they have to take a look at themselves because they're on the defensive. And so
Mhm.
that is something, that's a whole other topic of how to help someone who's struggling. But the bottom line is you help yourself. And if that means changing or setting boundaries in a relationship and letting them experience the consequence instead of putting up with a bunch of behavior that's not, you shouldn't be tolerating under the guise that they can't help it, that's not really a thing. So that's complicated when you're in relationship. Trying to convince someone that they have a problem is like arguing with a brick wall that it should be stone. You're making it worse, not better.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it reached a point of, like, a really big blow up, like, something really, really bad happened, and I feel like, sadly, that's how it is for a lot of people. They have this, like, one really bad incident, and then they're like, "Okay, it's time."
Yes. And one of the pitfalls with that is when the motivation to change is coming from a place of wanting to avoid pain because it
Mm.
got so bad, then the motivation to stay sober is only going to be as good as if you still have pain, which is why people get into that cycle where they'll get on and off the wagon because they think that they want to avoid the pain. And that's why this is a thinking problem. It's like, what would you rather be doing? Who would you rather be? What do you want in life? And helping people understand that it is the pursuit of pleasure that is the most motivating of all. But people think that alcohol is giving them pleasure because they're associating it with stress relief. They're associating it with something that they need in order to cope. And that's where you do need help and support because it is the way you're thinking about it. Even the idea that somebody has alcohol cravings, no, you don't. Your body craves water and sleep and sunlight and movement. Like you're not speaking the truth. Your body's not craving alcohol. It's craving relief. It's craving dopamine. It's craving, cortisol drops. It's craving support. And so part of, recovery is speaking the truth about what your body really needs.
You mentioned earlier about this kind of spiral. I think you said you feel guilty, but what came to my mind was sort of a shame spiral that I remember myself being in when I was actively using alcohol to cope and didn't know any other way when I was in my 20s. And kind of like you said with college, it's very normalized in college. And in your 20s, in the area I'm in, it was very normalized. People got married much older and settled down much older. We were party hard on the weekends. You're younger, so you can bounce back a little easier than, and so it was a long time from like college until and I've talked about this in another episode of my 30th birthday. I had one of the worst panic attacks of my life. That day lasted like whole day, but a week after that, that was like so many years of my life that I was numbing myself. And the shame spiral for me was like on top of the underlying root causes of why I was using that to cope, which was now I know I had severe social anxiety. So I really couldn't do anything without drinking socially. And then I'd feel fine about myself. I had severe like self-esteem issues. I was very depressed. I had anxiety. I mean, listen, most people that are wired with their brain chemistry with depression and anxiety, they have it from when they're really young, right? But when there's not resources around or maybe you're not able to kind of get help for it, then you don't know, and it manifests in different ways. And so now I know why I was numbing myself with alcohol and wanting to feel like I was pretty in front of guys, or I don't know, I could talk to men easier, just like so many of the things I'm aware of now with myself. And I also really love who I am now. I hated who
Yeah.
I was back then. I was doing a lot of behaviors when I was drinking and blacking out that was like shame spiral on top of shame spiral. So like I
Yeah.
had to like break through all of that after that horrible panic attack, and decided to set boundaries with a lot of the people I was hanging out with. And I knew after some like therapy, I got myself into therapy right away. I really just changed my lifestyle. I physically felt like my body was something was wrong with me. I have health anxiety, all this stuff. And started learning about anxiety, started practicing it, right? I went to my master's degree. I'm a psychologist. And so part of that was helping me, right, learn about my own brain. But it still sticks with me. I still remember that part of my life, and the shame that came with that is just like I did so much inner child work, and I can definitely talk about it now without kind of like really feeling like attached emotionally to it anymore. But I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about, do you see that a lot with this like shame spiral with people when they're coming out of it and they really want to change, and how hard is it to move through that?
The shame spiral is a much bigger issue than the alcohol dependency or any sort of physiological thing, because the shame is what perpetuates alcohol use disorder. The more you try and fail, the worse you feel about yourself. And the habit that you get into is beating yourself up. You're such a fool. You've embarrassed yourself. Why do you keep doing this? And that's actually what has to change first. The logical fallacy is that the shame is caused by the drinking. But the truth is that the drinking is an escape from the shame and the anxiety. And so that's what has to be dealt with. And that's honestly why I call myself the hangover whisperer. First of all, I don't deal with people who aren't going to work and they're drinking all day and that sort of thing. I deal with women that are highly functional, more up on the spectrum. But that's why I don't have them quit drinking, because avoiding the shame with good behavior, like I did, perfectionistic Polly, just now I'm checking all the boxes, you got nothing on me. That doesn't teach you how to process the shame. And what the shame is your default mode network, your internal narrator that is something is wrong with me, those core root limiting beliefs that I am unworthy, I am unlovable, I am incapable, I lack resources. Like, that's the work that has to be done. This isn't about the alcohol. This is about your relationship with yourself. And most people are not aware that they are not their thoughts, that they're just listening to their thoughts. And it's tuned in to hate myself radio station. And they're trying to do all this external stuff to fix that and people please and perform and be a perfectionist, because they're trying to regulate that internal narrative with external proof that it's not true. But no matter how good you get, like me, it didn't change how I was speaking to myself. And it wasn't until I became aware of that stream of consciousness and learned the tools to like literally rewrite your neural pathways and how to break and pattern interrupt. The habit you need to change is the thought processes. It's the thought processes on Tuesday that are making you drink on Friday, And so you have to understand that it's not a drinking problem, it's a thinking problem. It's an anxiety symptom. It's a shame spiral. And that's the real problem.
I mean, I just want to piggyback off that really quick, because that's essentially why I really resonated with the type of psychology that I am trained in, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's not the end all be all for everybody, but it's worked wonders for me. It's one of the most well-renowned types of treatment for anxiety disorders. And it is all about changing your thought patterns. It's all about changing the way you think. And it really is the only thing that actually helped me through that time when I was having severe panic attacks and I was drinking so much to cope. And I actually didn't stop drinking. I didn't get sober, didn't drink for a little while, as I kind of went through this first part of my journey. But I still drink in moderation now. I'm 45 and it's that 30th birthday. So I guess it's been like 15 years of this really hard work. And so much was of the thinking problem and really needing to change the way that my brain has thought for the first 30 years of my life. Like, my brain was conditioned to think a certain way about myself and about the world and about life, and about who I am and what I should be and all of these things for 30 years of my life. And I had to like reprogram that. It takes it takes work. It takes a long time to do that. I'm still doing it every
Yeah.
day, you know?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
love that it's a thinking.
It is thinking, but with cognitive behavioral therapy, like that is an interlocking puzzle piece with nervous system literacy. You can't do mindset work when the body is in a state of stress. And I think most people think of anxiety as the stream of consciousness, but that's just really the sound of, what it sounds like in your head. It's a reflection of an alarm going off in your body, and you're trying to think your way out of a feeling problem. So, cognitive therapy, behavior therapy works when you're in the therapist office and you guys are talking about it and it's making sense. But when you get back into a panic attack, like, that you should be thinking differently, but it's like, and that creates so much frustration and just more perceived failure of something is wrong with me, because you can't access that neural pathway when you're on the panic station and so learning how to read your own body language, the somatic experiencing, and just doing the work to understand that you think how you feel. And instead of going up here, yes, all of the rework and rewrites are so important, the cognitive behavioral therapy, but there's also a physical component of learning how to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, bringing yourself into the present moment. I am safe. I am okay. And just allowing yourself to calm back down so that you can then do the work. And I think people get frustrated because they're trying to think through their anxiety, and it's like, stop thinking. Like,
Yes.
that's a sure way to you're pouring fuel on it.
Well, in actuality, your brain isn't going to be able to even access that
Right.
part that wants to learn how to do some cognitive work if your body doesn't feel safe, right? And
Right.
that's essentially what happens when you have a panic attack. Your brain is not in a rational state at that moment. So
No.
all of the cool tools that help when you're at, a level 3 or a 2 are not nothing. You're at this really heightened state. You know what I mean? I totally. So I'd love to know what tools or practices would you like? What are your go-to tools and practices that you'd recommend for someone who wants to feel safe in their body without wanting to turn to a drink?
I think the way I language it is like just a pattern interrupt. So, for example, you're in the habit of running all day, come home, you pour the glass of wine because you're cooking your dinner and you're going into your evening. And I call it the delay, don't deny. So, like, you make a deal with your brain. Not saying we're not drinking. I think that's a huge problem with people where they have this all or nothing mindset and they don't understand, no, you're going to move the needle. If you're not taking a break from alcohol, then telling yourself you're not going to drink and then finally caving at like 8 o'clock, just that shame spiral kicks in, right? So I call it the delay, don't deny. And all you're going to do is come home from work and lay on your bed for 5 minutes. Just give yourself a moment to pause and take a breath, because what that's doing is stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system, and you think how you feel. And so you may lay down on your bed and realize how tired you are. And that version of you will then think of, okay, I need to go to bed early tonight. But if you don't ever reconnect with that relaxed state, and it only takes a few minutes to get there. But if you truly I'm on a 5-minute break, sink into your bed, put your head on your pillow, delay, don't deny, then the version of you that gets up from that bed is not the same version of you that laid down. And then the anxiety level, again, we're not going from 10 to nothing. We might take it from an 8 to a 4. You're drinking slower. You're more aware. You've got a bigger time frame. So you're thinking about tomorrow and not shooting yourself in the foot tonight. So that's one of the most powerful things is, don't make big decisions about how much your future self will or won't drink. Just take care of your body in the present moment. Like, go take a breath and pause.
I love that. I love that. I mean, I think part of that too is just recognizing that maybe what you need in those moments is some self-compassion and giving yourself some grace and figuring out how to do that for yourself. What do you think?
Yeah. I think reconnecting with yourself. I used to think that self-care was getting my highlights done and making sure my butt was a size 2 and, pedicures and Prosecco. And now it's like, I think this resonated with me as a mother. It's kind of like taking care of a 2-year-old. I don't know what it is that we think grown-ups that our needs are ignorable, that our needs are negotiable. You still need sleep, you still need rest, you still need decompression from all of the distractions and stimulations. Like, you have to learn that self-care is about taking care of the body. And sometimes it's like taking care of a 2-year-old who wants vodka. You have to give them a timeout and put them in their room. But I think that having a sense of compassion for the version of you who is taking care of the version of you with the habit. Like, there's a shift in identity. Instead of seeing someone as self as someone who's on the struggle bus, who has low willpower and high anxiety and all of that, it's like, no, I'm going to take care of this body who's got a lot of thought processes we got to untangle. Not going to do it all right now. And got a habit of a hand to mouth, all or nothing sort of mindset. Like, we're going to move the needle there, becoming the version of you who's taking care of the body and loving her right where she's at. I mean, that's the key. The first step to being okay is acknowledging that you're not really okay. Stop pretending that everything is fine. Allow yourself to not know everything, not be able to fix everything in this moment, and just allow that pressure of fixing it right now to just allow the pressure to come off.
Isn't that so freeing to know, like, once you finally are like, you know what? I'm not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect is not attainable. Everybody has something, and I'm allowed to fail. I'm allowed to not be okay. Really, like, when you're a perfectionist and you allow yourself to do that, there's like instant freedom in that. I don't know what it is, but I align with you on a lot of things. I also don't drink anymore because I used to have that all or nothing mentality with it. And luckily, I developed severe panic disorder, so it kind of it cut it for me itself, but I was
Yeah.
looking back and how my relationship with alcohol, it was never a pretty one. It was always an all or nothing. I never went out and felt like I was just drinking to have a socially fun time. It was like, why are we blacking out every time we touch alcohol? Why are we literally not even remembering? I remember being like, what is going out? Because I don't remember it. Like, I don't even remember what we did last night. And so I think, like you, I'm a perfectionist, and just allowing myself to have these flaws and own them and not be ashamed of them and know that, hey, these are a couple things I struggle with and that's all right. I had a question for you. I'm curious if there was a certain type of therapy that helped you when you were going through all this.
Well, I didn't see a therapist for this. Coaching and therapy have a lot of overlaps, the mindset tools. So I had a coach, but so life coaching, I also did do, like, kind of like you, Allison, where you kind of do what you need to do professionally to heal yourself. I also got a master's and got certified in addiction and recovery. So for me, coaching was my preferred method because I find coaching to be so much more forward facing and solution focused. And, I've had a lot of therapy in my life. I feel like I understood the source of all the issues, but there was this no do gap. I know what I need to be doing. I know what I should be thinking, but I'm not doing and experiencing that. And coaching kind of bridges that gap. You have to get to a point where you can do coaching, but I think that there was no specific type of therapy, just coaching.
That is interesting for people listening, that but the doing and that bridge. I think a lot of us live in that of like, we know what we need to do, but how can we get to that place of actually doing what we need to do? And that's where the magic happens.
Dr. Kyra Bobinet has done a lot of research. Her book is The Unstoppable Brain, and she has come out with this thing called the iterative mindset. And in contrast to the iterative mindset is the performance-based mindset, where your self-approval and accolades are conditional on the end result, and how much we need that mindset in our jobs and in performance like sports and things. But that's the opposite relationship we need to have with ourselves. And just understanding that there's different types of mindset. The iterative mindset is where How do I just move the needle? We're always tinkering around with what works, what didn't work, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we want more of, what we want less of. Becoming somebody who, instead of trusting yourself to get it all right and stick the landing, trust yourself to pay attention and learn from every experience and allow that awareness to inform your next decisions.
I love that. I always tell people I work with that awareness is the first step of anything, is just being self-aware and being able to acknowledge like what is really going on. Gosh, I wish we could talk for like hours. This is so great. So informative too, and just brings me back to really what had helped me move through that time when I really just felt like I was in such a dark space. And so if you're listening to this or you're watching this, just know that there is a light at the end, and it takes work. It does, but it's okay because it doesn't feel as hard as you move through it. It starts out feeling like hard work, but then it gets easier, and then it actually sometimes gets fun because you see the progress and you think to yourself, "Oh my gosh, like for me, it was more of I'm going to this social situation. I'm going on dates. I am being like intimate with a guy and I'm not drunk. Like I can do this and I can feel safe in my body and I don't need to drink to feel like, and actually now it's fun to do that. It's nice to have the feelings of those good things without feeling anxious about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And this idea that it's a lot of work, you know what else is a lot of work? Not doing the work.
Oh my gosh,
Like
totally.
having a
Yes.
drinking problem and panic attacks and anxiety and low self-esteem and insecurities, like also a lot of work.
Totally.
Like life is a struggle. Choose your hard,
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'd love, before we go, we always do something each week called the healing tip of the week. And I'd love for you to kind of give your perspective of a healing tip if someone listening feels really stuck in the cycle of their anxious drinking. And maybe is there a gentle step that you would recommend that they could take today to start kind of shifting their relationship?
Yeah. So I call it the less is more mindset. So many people with anxiety identify as the all or nothing. They may not identify as perfectionists, but it's kind of like they're in or they're out, right? And that is actually a form of distorted thinking. Black and white thinking is distorted. All thinking could be distorted. If you ask your brain to show you, it will give you evidence for whatever you're looking for. And so instead of thinking of yourself as an all or nothing, black or white, go big or stay home person, just for fun, ask your brain to show you evidence of where you're actually a less is more person. Because ain't nobody got time to be addicted to everything. You don't actually have an addictive personality. Like that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That is an idea that you're just collecting evidence. Ask your brain to show you where you're a less is more person. And just kind of like you said, Taylor, how good it feels to like just give yourself permission to relax. Notice how good it feels to kind of be a less is more person, to kind of be like, I didn't binge the whole season. I just watched 2 episodes. I don't have to run a whole entire marathon. I'm just going to take a slow walk today and pick up running tomorrow. I don't have to eat all the cookies. I can just eat one. And notice where you're doing this naturally, because again, you don't have time to be an all or nothing person about everything. So giving your brain that exercise, it puts your reticular activating system kind of into a new neural pathway because there is evidence that you're a less is more person. That will decrease anxiety. That will inspire you to slow down a little bit, which is the fuel that's driving all the anxiety, is just this idea that you can't ever stop. And once you start identifying as a less is more person, the more evidence you see that it's true, the more that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then you start to see yourself as somebody who prefers being in balance, who prefers taking care of yourself. And that is a really powerful way to start shifting the identity for any type of behavior that's problematic.
Less
I'm
is
like you
more.
in so many ways. Like I know you said you ran marathons too, so you're a lot like me. Like if I go to the gym and I don't leave my heart rate hitting 180, drenched in sweat, that was me for like so long. Like if I'm going to run, I'm going to go run 7 miles a day. Like as an anxious person, that is just, hey, let's dysregulate the nervous system even more. And so I got to this place where like allowing yoga, allowing meditation, allowing yourself to go to the gym and not leaving sweaty and knowing that you're doing something good for yourself by doing that. Like we can't burn the candle at both ends all day long and expect to not be anxious, expect to not want to turn our brain off with these coping mechanisms. So I think
All
that's so powerful. Less
all
is more.
forms all forms of self-sabotage
Mhm.
are signs that you're running on a deficit. You're putting more out than you're taking in. And if it's not alcohol, it's food, it's spending, it's toxic people pleasing, it's, all of the things. If you are self sabotaging in any way, you're not giving yourself what you need. You have unmet needs and you have to learn to balance all the doing with the being. You don't have to like I'm more efficient and more productive than I ever was. I've accomplished so much more in my life than when I was running marathons on top of boot camp and raising 4+3 step kids and doing all the things but I'm in control of my day, set boundaries. I hit the reset every couple hours. I go potty without my phone. Oh my God, that's all it takes. Just go to the bathroom without your damn phone and feel yourself and be like, oh, it feels so good to go potty.
Totally. I
That's
love
all it
that.
takes. Just hit the reset. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and just to kind of sum this up in my brain, and I feel like this just resonates with me so much because the one thing that literally helps me through some days when I still have those urges to, I just need to let's just do this, or I feel pressure to do it because I'm in a situation with family or everybody's drinking and all that stuff. And I ask myself, why am I uncomfortable without it right now? Can I sit with the discomfort of not having to give in to that? And actually, I don't even really want to do it a lot of times. I'm like, I would just reach for it because other people have it or something, right?
Right.
And so I've been teaching myself that, how to sit with that discomfort of it.
There's a Mark Manson quote. He did the How to Not Give a Fuck or something like that book. He's big. And he says, the pursuit of pleasure is inherently itself a negative experience. The acceptance of a negative experience is inherently a pleasant experience. And it's true. Like what you just said, like, how can I sit with it? How can I accept this discomfort instead
Yeah.
of chasing it and going and getting a drink or going and, talking or doing the things like
Yeah.
when you pursue pleasure, you are inherently in a not pleasurable state. When you just accept all the crap, the first step to being okay is saying, I'm not okay. That is a relief. So it's very interesting.
Oh my gosh, mic drop. And we will end there because that was what an incredible quote. Oh my gosh. Seriously, thank you. Oh, well, this was so awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and this wonderful conversation. I'm sure we'll be collaborating on the gram because I've already planned in my head. I'd love to kind of do a post or a live or something together. So that would be
Sounds
awesome.
good. All right.
But tell everyone where they can find you and more about your program.
Well, I have a podcast called It's Not About the Alcohol for anybody that's looking for strategies. Like, I gave you some. I do hundreds on my podcast. I am the Hangover Whisperer on social media. And then my website is emotionalsobrietycoaching.com.
Love that. The Hangover Whisperer. Stop it. That is so great. Like, I can't. I love it. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you,
Wait,
everybody.
one thing. Colleen,
Taylor. Okay, Taylor. Yes.
I always love meeting people like you because it shows that we don't go through things in life for no reason and that there's always something on the other side. And I think it's beautiful that you share your story and you're so vulnerable because somebody has heard your story. I'm sure a ton of people have heard your story and they feel hope and they feel like there's a chance for them to start over and to even see life in a more beautiful lens and better than they ever saw it. And so thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your story and knowing that what you went through wasn't for a waste.
It's not. The panic attack woke you up. Alcohol used to sort of wakes you up. Like pain is what wakes us up and moves us from an unconscious, reactive lifestyle into a conscious choice. And so we can only be grateful, for
Yeah.
the pain that was bad enough to get our attention. Just imagine if I had not been quite as bad as I was. I wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
Thank you. That's so, so great. Appreciate it so much again, everybody. We love you so much. We'll be back with a new episode next week of the Anxiety Chicks podcast. And of course, happy healing. Bye, everyone.